continuing the story. So now the servant has a horse and he has a bag full of money. He begins on his journey. He leaves the castle walls and he enters into the forest. And he travels for quite some time when he comes to a pond. And again, he begins to hear speech. Someone was speaking. And he looked down and he see three fish. Three fish that had gotten out of water and stuck in the reeds. And they were speaking in a very sorrowful tone. Oh, look at us. How stupid have we become? We have got caught in these reeds, and surely we are going to starve. We're going to suffocate because we cannot come back into the water. Now, because this young man, right, he's no longer a servant, but he's a young man, a youth, he dismounts from his horse, takes these fish, and puts them back in the water. They swim around delighted, quivering with delight, and they come up and they says, "Good sir, thank you so much. Someday we will repay you. One good deed deserves another." The young man gets back on his horse, continues his travels. Travels for a long time through the forest, across creeks and rivers, and suddenly he begins to hear that speech again. And he's like, "What is that?" And it's coming down low, low, low to the ground. And he listens and he looks down and he hears the Ant King. And the Ant King is angry. The Ant King is speaking. "Look at these great highborns. They're so up there. They just trample around with this beast and they stomp on my people without mercy." Now, servant, or the young man rather, right? Because he has that kind heart, he says, "Great Ant King, my apologies, I didn't see you there. Let me move my horse to the side." The Ant King speaks up. "Good sir, thank you so much. One day I will repay you. One good deed deserves another." So the Met boy keeps traveling around with his horse, and he comes into this other part of the forest and he comes across two ravens. And these two ravens were bickering and they were throwing their children out of the nest. "You good for nothing fledglings, we cannot provide food for you anymore." They push them out of the desk. "You need to go and fend for yourself." The three baby ravens come flying down and land on the ground. And they, in a very sorrowful voice, they says, "What are we going to do? We cannot yet fly. We cannot really tend to ourselves. Surely we're going to starve." So this young man, he dismounts, takes out his sword, slays his own horse, and offers it to the three ravens. The ravens hop over and they satisfy their hunger and they look up to the man like, "Good sir, thank you so much. One day we will repay you. One good deed deserves another." Now this young man no longer has a horse, so he must now travel and walk with his 2 feet touching the earth. And he begins to travel through the forest across the lands. And we will pause there and reflect on this part of the story. All right, so now we begin to reflect on the second part of the story of the white snake. Now, one of the things to reflect on here is before, in the first part of the story, when he ate of the white snake, it was thought that by eating it, he was given this power. He was given a power where he can now know the language of animals. But instead, we may come close in and say, actually, by eating the snake, the white snake, veils had been taken away and had re-gifted him his own ability to hear and participate with the otherness that was around him. Rather than being part of that high-born, high class, he was able to lower himself or humble himself to be in this greater relatedness with the other creatures and beings of the land. And so what we see here is, like, as we mentioned before, he went from the castle walls that was, the place of affluence, where everybody was dressed in their nice clothes and there's plenty of food and so forth. But he was a servant to it. He forsake that and began his own journey. He left the castle walls, entered into the wild territories, where now he gets to begin to mature in his own sense of inner nobility. And we see here aspects of the peacemaker, that of being of a kind heart, of saying, hey, here I am. I hear something that is in need. I can show up for this. And he allowed that sense of peace and of being of service, being a greater directive than his own power. So, what we see here is by eating the white snake, he was able to now grant beingness to other beings, other creatures, other ways of life. Right? And that is that's a great power. It's to be able to grant beingness. Okay. Now you may ask, wow, he's helping out the fish, he's helping out the ants, he's helping out the ravens, but why would he slay his own horse? His horse has been carrying him up across all these miles of land. And it seemed like he just slayed it without thought. Here we want to tap into the archetypal energy and the symbology of what is the horse. We're in a time of castles, we're in a time of kings and queens. So within this context, the horse symbolizes this sense of power, right? Ever heard of like get off your high horse? Right? So when being on your horse, you're above it all. You're of this higher status in life. Those who had horses back in that time were people of nobility, but not an inner nobility, but more of a sense of wealth. So by the act of him slaying his own horse was this final kind of initiation, this severance from that other life and saying, yeah, I'm willing to put my feet on the ground and walk with you. And if you're able to walk with others, grant others beingness to be of relatedness of the same status, now that's a great power. So what we're seeing here is rather than shooting for power outside of us, rather than serving a sovereignty outside of us, when we come close in and grant the powers and the beingness to those who are with us, that's when we come close in. That's when the gruel gifts of life begin to unfold. All right, let's move to the next layer of the story.